It's obvious that you listen to this show to hear about and support other people's dreams. But what about yours? What is your dream project? I'm here to help you break through whatever is in the way of your dreams and get you to the finish line. Go to dreamingbigcoaching.com today and take the first step. Literally, it's a button you can click to sign up for a free consultation with me. Let's find out if I can help you reach your goal. Click on Take the First Step. It's that simple to start the rest of your life. Get coached by Rob Southgate at dreamingbigcoaching.com. Look, we're all nerds here. Todd Stashwick's Nerd Circus is a great place to pick up nerdy paraphernalia and groovy wares. How about some sweet lava lamp dice? Or maybe a funky 70s Rec Room Nerd Circus dice box? Does that do anything for you? Need a drink? What about the book Mystic Libations? Critical cocktails for the thirsty adventurer. Look, Todd Stashwick's Nerd Circus is the place for nerdy threads, cool tabletop gifts, and more. Go to thenerdcircus.com and check out the cool stuff. Oh yeah, and let them know the TTRPG Insider sent you. Welcome to the first episode of TTRPG Insider. The TTRPG Insider is a podcast about, you guessed it, tabletop role-playing games. Actually, it's more specifically about the amazing people that create TTRPGs. For each episode, I'm going to interview someone who's involved in making the games that we all love to play. You'll hear world builders, artists, musicians, writers, marketers, really anyone involved behind the scenes. I want to hear their stories, not just a description of their game. Each month, we will feature a different game and the people behind it. That doesn't mean we're going to stay only on one game. My guests can come from anywhere at any time, as long as they're part of the TTRPG community. If they have a crowdfunding campaign, we'll talk about that. If not, we'll just geek out about TTRPGs and other nerdy stuff with them. Before we get to our first guest, I have a little business to take care of. First of all, I'm Rob Southgate. I'm your host. You can follow us on Facebook by searching for TTRPG Insider. We plan to add other social media, but for now, that's the best place. Or you can follow me personally on Twitter at @rsouthgate or on Instagram at @robsouthgate. If you want to email us, you can send me an email directly to rob@ttrpginsider.com. For this, our first month, we're featuring the Black Ballad by the Storytellers Forge. They have a backer kit campaign that launches on March 7th and runs for 30 days. Please support this crowdfunding effort, both financially and by sharing it across your social media. You never know who's going to fall in love with this game. Go to BackerKit and search for the Black Ballad or simply click on the link in our show notes. Our first guest is Drake Mefessta. His metal opera is the inspiration for the Black Ballad. He's a graphic artist, composer, and all-around creative force. Okay, that's enough from me. Here's Drake. Drake, thank you so much for being on the show. I am really excited to talk to you. You're actually the first musician that I've had on TTRPG Insider, so this is really a banner day. Why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into kind of the project.
Well, firstly, I wanted to thank you for having me on the show today. Just the same, it's a privilege to be here. In terms of the scope of my relation to the project, so Rick and I have known each other for, quite a number of years, spanning all the way back to approximately 2007, 2008 is when we first met. We had met kind of mutually through third-party friends, and we're taking part in, a bit of this live action storytelling, which I, at the time, looking to expand on my theatrical chops and doing improv theater and things of that aspect, is that's always been an integral part of myself. Really found this kind of kinship, and we really worked well off of each other. The interactions that I had during that time had spawned me to integrate a novel that I never published, but aspired to write a story all the way back in 2005, 2006. I found this kind of new revived inspiration. And so I started developing, these characters and this world of the Shadelands, and composed the music. So inadvertently, it became this rock opera album that I just wanted to tell this story, which I would have to say that the characters, the story, the plot, and all things contained there within are an amalgamation of many things. First off, kind of personal experiences of my own life, thematic aspects of death and violence mixed in with at a time kind of a lack of understanding of the world around me, and wanting to take all of these things that I felt, the various philosophical perspectives, and in turn they became aspects that were then transformed into the characters. So as I grew as an individual, my opinions changed, and I started to see the world from these multidimensional facets. I then in turn took those and put them into the viewpoints and made living, breathing characters, and then put them into this world known as the Shadelands, which the world into itself is this, world that, though cold, dark, and seemingly unforgiving, has kind of a gentle beauty to it. And it kind of was a reflection of the days, some of the more nostalgic days of my youth, which were always, cast with over gray skies on autumn days, with the slight brisk, wind and the crackling underneath your feet, and that warm yet slightly chilled air, that was just perfect enough. And a lot of my memories with friends and loved ones were like during those times. And so, as the autumn months tend to roll in, I was always taken by this nostalgia. And so really what the Red Opera was one part philosophical perspective, one part cautionary tale, as I had kind of also taken note of being a big fan of history and seeing patterns of how human behavior was. I had always kind of seen the rise and fall of civilizations, and I wanted to kind of bring in those aspects too, which is why the Red Opera ends with a crescendo Macbethian death, where just, like the characters themselves are complex and there are no distinct heroes and villains. Um, in the end, inevitably, with both sides inevitably destroying themselves, it kind of provides that kind of cautionary tale. And in my ways, I try to kind of use, again, that the message is my own self-expression. I'm not trying to sell anybody on messaging. I keep life genuinely to the realm of fantasy. Sure. I don't really take part actually in civilization. Just to overarch that, I'm very reclusive, and I like to keep to just letting the music, the story, that be the living thing. Because at the end of the day, once you publish something, it is, as it was once said, the death of an artist, meaning once it's out there, it's no longer just yours to interpret as it was in your head. Now it is subjected to the criticisms, and it's subjected to the interpretations of those around you. So you have to be mindful and careful with what you do. And I think in a lot of ways, one of the greatest pitfalls, at least that I've seen, not to get too much even onto a tangent, but people being unable to divorce themselves from their own egos and let the work be pushed out in front instead of the artist being pushed out in front. And I try to genuinely do that. If I have a statement to make, it's going to be in the lyrics and in the melodies, and I leave it solely up to that, trying to really even let myself be an influence upon it.
Now, I have a question. I'm looking through your Red Opera stuff and DiAmorte, and I'm wondering. So, you and I don't know each other yet. So I have questions, base questions. As a musician, let's go there. What instruments are you playing? What do you play? I'm sure it's probably a wide range, but what is your instrument of choice?
I can't boast and say that I play a wide range. It's solely to piano and composing.
Okay.
So my role and my task is, again, a central figure as, I guess just the best way to summarize. This started off as a personal studio project that blossomed into all this, much to my surprise and my delight. Didn't always necessarily think it would go this way, with everything sprawling outwards, but I wanted to make this personal album, and I was, blessed to work with a bevy of talented musicians, so I came to the table with the ideas and the raw notes and and the compositions, because obviously I'm not an opera singer, and I'm not a guitarist, and I'm not this or that, and you rely on these individuals and give them a moniker of trust to put their own fingerprint on it. But not only that, in some ways, they also came back with some things that actually pleasantly surprised me. And I've caught myself on more than one occasion going, well, I didn't intend that. I didn't expect that, but I'm certainly going to accept it.
Yeah.
And that came with the, tones that the singers, or maybe a solo here that I, didn't imagine. Um, I guess in some ways I try to, I mean, not in any way disrespect, but I call it trying to divorce myself from the George Lucas syndrome, where if you're going to create something greater than yourself, you have to relinquish a measure of control and give the trust to the experts of the individual tasks, and see yourself more as a cog in a Swiss watch, as opposed to the overdriving force of it. So, I would lay the foundations and write the lyrics and do this, and then work with the individuals on the parts, and then it just slowly was assembled over the course of, I believe, approximately 7 to 8 years, if I recall.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was a true labor of love, and I wanted to do it as kind of a life's work, and thought, actually, funny enough, that would be the end of it, and I was wrong again, pleasantly.
Yes. So is like symphonic metal, is that your genre that you've always gravitated towards?
Oh, I was more actually always into classical music. Funny enough, metal didn't even come into it until approximately 2001. Funny enough, I started out inversely, very much into classical music, and not in any understatement, classical music very much saved, my life, if we could look at it in that way. Um, when I started to, it happened by accident. Actually, I wasn't even into music until my mid years of high school. I was solely devoted to the visual arts, but I became, ever increasingly, unhappy, because I was trying to exude something onto the canvas, and it wasn't coming across as visual alone. And then one day in high school, while passing by the music class, they were going over music history, and they were playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. And it struck me so hard that I skipped many days, or not even say many days, many classes, to try to catch when that was a thing. And that was, of course, for our younger listeners, the time before you could simply go to the internet and,
Right.
so, you
Yeah,
had to
now
work
they just go
for
to
it.
Spotify and they can
Yeah,
satisfy that itch.
yeah. And so that was the first, I would have to say, mark that changed my life. And from that time, I actually skipped lunch every single day, for the rest of the time I was even in high school, and spent it, I'm sure, to the horror of the other music teachers, teaching myself piano in those private piano rooms that they had in the class, in there. And so it became my great obsession, as I am inclined to be very obsessive when it comes to wanting to do something. I get very driven to completion to do anything that I said, that I want to do.
Sure.
And so, yeah, for hours on end a day, I just taught myself and picked up books and went to the library. And
So did you ever have a piano teacher, or is it all self-taught?
I had a couple piano classes, obviously, in high school, as mandatory. I attempted to go under the tutelage of a couple of teachers, but I I don't know whether it'd be considered stubbornness or just my particular way. I just like to do things on my own, and work at my own pace and work under my own direction for the most part. even to my detriment. I will say, and would never recommend anybody do that. Get proper education, of course, because, I think that I limited my capacity, as a composer in some ways, and your potential by not learning the basics at an early age. But
so have you gone on? Did you ever study composing with anybody, or was this another natural progression?
I learned vicariously by working with great people.
Okay.
I always liked to do things, as I would say, on the job. And so I always developed musically by just simply learning from musicians better than myself and taking sharp observation of that. And then, of course, again, the furious study of repeatedly playing um, various great composers and deconstructing their music in my head of what made it great, why did this make me feel, and especially those moments, even listening to symphonic metal and black metal, I'm always seeking out those moments that raise the hair on your arms and trying to strive to understand what it is that builds that up, and what about the combination of instruments and melodies and everything together to create that experience. And that is always been the key word for me, is experience. I want people to experience something, because I experienced something great and I want to share that. And that has always been the root cause of, and the driving force behind anything that I've done. So
Very interesting. I mean, I have quite a background in music myself. My dad was an avant-garde jazz drummer, and I've been surrounded by musicians and artists forever. So as much as you might feel like, oh man, I may have cut myself short here or there, actually your story is not uncommon with a lot of them. I do have people that did go that route, where like I studied theory. So I was a monster at theory for a while, but it didn't translate into composing or anything. Even though I understood it, I could look at it like a book and go, oh, I understand exactly what's going on. I could not translate it that way. So it's very interesting that that you heard it, you felt it, and it was all about the emotion, the experience, and metal is an interesting avenue. For me, it was punk rock. I really dig that energy. And a lot of punk rock guys went the black metal route too, which is really interesting. I don't know if you're in Chicago, but if you go to Kuma's Corner and they got their black metal blasting through while you're eating your burgers, it's like the greatest experience you're ever going to have. Talk about getting chills. It's food and metal, and it's just like, oh my God, very visceral.
Yes.
So piano, playing piano. You said you started out in classical. This is kind of a nerdy music question, but who of the composers would you say have had a lasting impression on you? And I know it's probably a mile long, but there's usually, like, when I talk jazz, I can talk about a couple of people. I listen to all sorts of jazz, but there's a couple that are my touchstones. I always end up back listening to certain people. Who is it for you?
Well, I mean, the list is not going to surprise anybody even half familiar with classical music, and even those who aren't. The names have been mentioned time and again for countless years for reasons. I'll go through the who's and the whys. I would have to say, of course, first Beethoven, because he was through Moonlight Sonata the spark that changed the very course of my life.
Sure.
And profoundly. I would have to say then, because of the fact that he also revolutionized the orchestral soundscape by giving, a sort of, I mean, for the worn word of epic, but I mean, that is the only way to genuinely describe it, because it's what he was gearing towards. And so those ideologies, when it comes to arrangements, I found a good kinship with as well. And so I would have to say that because of those reasons he would be the first. Closely second would be Mozart. And the reason for that is because I love his touch of madness. I
Yeah.
love the childlike, free form, uncaring flow of his music that was arguably, I mean, ahead of its time, if you think about it. And so too was Lacrimosa. Well, I mean, it's poetry to itself. Do I really need to say it? Go play it,
Yeah.
and let it speak for itself. With and so his wild arrangements and his ability to, in a way, subvert expectations, to trick his audience and to play with them in what I would consider to be almost a devilishly playful manner, that extended not only just from his personality but into his music and also his upbringing, um, and the harsh expectations that were put in front of him. Before actually, funny enough, knowing about Mozart and like most things, as I was starting out, I found myself, falsely, as most things end up being when you think of you've developed something original. I actually conceived at the time of trying to do trick piano playing, playing backwards or
Oh,
playing
sure.
walking around my keyboard and thinking, oh, this is so, original. But of course, again, in the days before the internet, still during that time, you think a lot of things original, and you're wrong. Uh, so,
It's been done.
yeah, it has been done. So, to find, they would play blindfolded, or to rather that they would place cloth on the piano and he would play, underneath the cloth. These grand feats I found just incredible. And of course, his end with the poetic end of Lacrimosa being unfinished. Um, I mean, if you're going to die, what more grandeur, way to do so? So, Mozart being second, and then to the lesser known and lesser studied Tchaikovsky, just because, again, the complexity of what he brought, and the, as I would call it, almost opulent sound, with the way that he would let the melodies dance, but I don't have as much kinship with him. I have about the same as I would with ones like Brahms, so to speak, where
Sure.
there's things that they do that I appreciate, but I don't have those sort of connections as much.
See, you had a wonderful answer for that. And that's exactly what I was looking for, because who inspires you? Yeah, we all like those composers, but who was it that got to you? And I think you explained that really well. Let's talk about tabletop for a second, because your work is being turned into, or has been turned into, tabletop RPG with the Red Opera, and now with the Black Ballad. Are you a gamer as well?
I was a gamer before I knew I was, to put it. So it started out like most things, where very much rooted in fantasy all throughout my years, always riled with imagination.
Sure.
Given shape when sometime before my teens, someone had brought over this big paper map in this book, and you already know where this is going, and introduced me with me not even knowing that it was Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't know what it was, but he said, "Here, you're gonna make this character, and you're gonna go through this adventure, and and I'm looking at this empty map, no characters, no, just a paper map, a drawn thing, and very detailed, very well printed, but so nothing, absolutely nothing, not even tokens on this map, and we're going room by room, and he's just laying out this story, and I'm
Yeah.
staring at a blank, empty map, going, "Wow."
Yeah. The possibilities are endless, right?
Yes. And so and again, it goes back to the experience. I was like, this piece of paper and this empty map, and here I am, fretting over a non-existent character that I just made that was about to fall to as the first grand enemy that I ever faced, and still to this day, the gelatinous cube.
Oh, the gelatinous cube, my favorite one.
And so this man introduced the gelatinous cube to this unassuming child and in all of its horror. But then I didn't see him for a very long time, and so of course I just thought it was this one-off game. Years later, was reintroduced to it. Joined a couple of groups on and off, and found that I actually wanted to spend more time creating than gaming. And I think that that's kind of the root of all of this is, although I love experiencing things myself, it immediately drives me to create. And I always prioritize creating over anything else. For reasons we might get into in this, or we might have a second conversation. But I always feel an urgency in life to get things done and to create. And so that ends up taking up the majority of my time. And but I have no regrets about it. I did enjoy PC gaming, as the years developed throughout the 90s. So I was privileged to take part in that. Played a couple of RPGs in my earlier years before music took over. And yeah, of course, those had a profound impact. I'd say art style. I obsessed more over the art books and the music than I did the game itself. I'd actually end up buying games I didn't even know or potentially care about just to look at the booklets and the artwork and and hear the music.
I'm so with you on that. I've got a stack of shame. I can't within a lifetime play all the stuff, but the artwork, the music, I mean, the story, it just draws me in. So I completely understand that. And you as an artist, you've also done you've done some art direction for film and acting and things too, right?
Predominantly, I've worked with several, different people, mainly in music, partially in film. Depending on the circumstances, it would be yes or no.
But you're an artist, and it's coming through. Like when I'm looking you up and I'm reading things, I'm seeing it. You have an oeuvre of work that goes. It's rooted in music, but it goes outward from there, and it's very cool, man. Very cool.
I have the philosophy of things blossoming outwards and becoming synergistically, available to take their natural course, meaning that, I get pulled in the directions that feel natural. And like most things, you should evolve. It's always been my aspiration to. It won't happen realistically, I don't think, but to try to master all of the crafts from video to music to writing to singing to composing, in my lifetime, and so I could better bring those forward in the music and in the music videos and all that. So I'm on the eternal journey of learning and bettering myself. Often through, harsh scrutiny of previous work.
Well, it shows when I'm looking at what you've accomplished and what you're doing here. Back to Black Ballad for a second here. So with Black Ballad, there's a Kickstarter that we've mentioned on the other episodes. For this particular show, we're doing a feature all month about the Black Ballad. So your partial brainchild here, you're the inspiration for it. Is getting featured in the first month, and we're trying to talk to everybody involved. It's really interesting to hear where it came from, how Rick got inspired, and how the team got inspired. I will put links in the show notes for people to get on the email list for the Black Ballad and to support it when the backer kit goes live on March 7th. But where can people find you, follow you? What's your preferred place for people to check out what you're doing, Drake?
Well, we tried to centralize everything over at DiAmorte.com, including the lore, the lyrics, the characters, the background, the artwork. So I think just simply by going to DiAmorte.com, you're going to find everything kind of centralized there. We really took great efforts to making a sort of website presentation that in of itself was kind of a world to explore. And there is a lot of content there. So I would say if people want a better understanding of the story and the lyrics and everything like that, that would be a good place to start. I could actually tell you right now, you're going to be one of the first public people to know this. I am currently working on a more solidified timeline of the Red Opera show itself, which we perform live, and presenting that to the website because I want to give people a very sharp, concise idea of the entire world and all of basically give that visual and written explanation of, the meaning behind the lyrics, the timeline of events, how things happen, the development of the characters. And I'm working on that off to the side when available in my personal time because art, just like what they would say, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, can you hear it? If people, I think in some ways even now don't fully understand the difference between the story, the RPG and all that, then, the messaging can get lost. And I want to be able to communicate that. But haven't really had the time throughout the years, unlike now where things are kind of moving at a more concise pace without my help, so to speak.
Right. So you want to give the user the experience that's going to make it a little more solid for them, a little more. I don't want to say tangible, but it is kind of a tangible experience for them. So that's fantastic, and thank you for sharing that on here. I really encourage people to go to his website, to check out diamorte.com, to experience the music. I mean, I've been having a blast with it this week, and I'm telling you, Black Ballad is so amazing. Definitely support it. We want to see this grow. I can tell you this, Drake, on one of the other episodes, I was talking to one of the writers and they were talking about kind of where the Black Ballad is going. And it's just so exciting. So let's make this dream a reality, right?
Indeed. I have been pleasantly surprised from the Red Opera until now to see what Rick has done and where he has taken his world, because it very much is his world when it comes to the realm of the RPG, and that's something that I really want to emphasize is that the story that I tell on the album and what he does, they are the same story beat for beat in terms of that. But I think Rick said it best, is that the plot is the same, but the set dressing is different, whereas my world is very much more grounded in a gritty reality, and he is now free to, live out the fantastical realm with, dragons and demons and tieflings. And I have been so amazed to see what he has done. And in turn, I am proud to be a part of his story and his world and, taking part in doing the design, work for the graphics and all that. It's been a pleasure and it's been an honor to contribute to that. And I look forward to seeing where it grows, because like things should, grow off one another and expand outwards, and I encourage that. I encourage growth.
Wonderful. Well, Drake, thank you so much for being on. Like I said, everything will be in the show notes. So follow Drake, follow DiAmorte, follow the Black Ballad. That's it, man. And I do want to invite you on another show in the future. Sure. I think we have quite a conversation for a show that I cannot even talk about yet, but it is all about the creative process and living a creative life. That's as much as I'm going to say right now. It's a show I only did live twice, and both times everyone wanted more. And I went, I think it's time to maybe put a little bit more into this. So I'm going to invite you back onto that at some point in the future. But Drake, thank you once again for being on. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, they can do it through the website, I'm sure.
It would be my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to it.
I was honored to have you on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Drake, for coming on TTRPG Insider. I encourage everyone listening to buy his music and support the Black Ballad so we can get more DiAmorte-inspired content. If you or anyone you know has a crowdfunding effort or has worked on a TTRPG, send them my way. I love to share cool TTRPG projects and to help people reach their goals. You can connect with me through the TTRPG Insider Facebook page or via email directly to rob@ttrpginsider.com. You can find links to this backer kit for the Black Ballad and any links we discussed in the show notes. TTRPG Insider is a production of Southgate Media Group, hosted, edited, and produced by me, Rob Southgate. Thanks so much for listening to the TTRPG Insider.